DEA. Ma'am, step out of the vehicle. We have reason to believe you're transporting illegal substances.
I'm an attorney. Here's my bar card.
That doesn't mean anything. Pop the trunk now.
This is racial profiling. I'm fully complying, but I'm documenting everything. Just open it.
The Publix on Piedmont Avenue was bustling when it happened. Saturday morning, 10:45 a.m. The kind of Georgia spring that promised heat with cool breezes and sunlight glinting off car windshields like shattered glass. Camille James had pulled into the lot for a quick grocery run before heading to her sister's house. Still in weekend clothes, linen blazer jeans, her leather tote slung over her shoulder. Her 8-year-old niece, Kennedy, was asking about ice cream, already clutching a stuffed unicorn against the window. Just another Saturday errand. Except 3 DEA agents were stepping out of an unmarked black SUV she hadn't noticed parked 2 rows back. Their body cameras were already rolling, recording what would become the most expensive grocery trip in Georgia history. If you're ready to see federal overreach dismantled in open court, like this video and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now because you won't want to miss tomorrow's story of agents messing with the wrong attorney and finding out. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this story. Agent Seth Miller led the approach. His partners, Agents Torres and Kemp, spread wide in a tactical formation like they were cornering something dangerous. Camille saw them coming as she closed the trunk, read the spacing, the hands hovering near their holsters, the body language of men who'd already made their decision. 12 years of practicing civil rights law, of reading federal courtrooms and hostile depositions, of cross-examining cops who thought badges made them untouchable. It had taught her to catalog threats in seconds. She set the last grocery bag down slowly, kept her hands visible, and began building her case. Agent Miller reached her first, his badge already out like a weapon. "Ma'am, I need to see some identification." His voice carried that practiced authority cops use when they're not actually asking. Torres and Kemp fanned out on either side, boxing her against the sedan. Kennedy pressed her face against the window, unicorn clutch tight. Camille kept her hands on the trunk. "Am I being detained, officer?" "Agent," Miller corrected. "DEA. And I asked you a question first." "I'm aware. And I asked if I'm being detained." Miller's jaw tightened. She'd seen that look before, in depositions and courtrooms. The moment a cop realizes the person in front of them knows the law. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area. Drug trafficking. You match a description we received?" Camille felt her pulse spike, but kept her voice level. What description would that be?" "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to cooperate." "I am cooperating. I'm asking what probable cause you have to detain me in a grocery store parking lot on a Saturday morning." She glanced at Torres, whose hand had moved to his belt. "And I'd appreciate it if your partner would stop treating me like a threat while I'm standing next to organic kale and rotisserie chicken." A woman pushing a cart slowed, watching. Another shopper had his phone out. Miller stepped closer. "Have you been involved in any drug-related activity, ma'am?" "No. Are we done here?" "Not yet." Miller's smile didn't reach his eyes. "See, here's the thing. We've got intelligence suggesting this vehicle may have been used in narcotics distribution. So I'm going to ask again. Identification, now." Camille reached slowly into her tote. She pulled out her wallet and handed him her driver's license. Miller barely glanced at it before passing it to Torres. "Where are you coming from today?" "The grocery store," as evidenced by the groceries. Where were you before that? Home, getting ready to visit my sister. And where's home? Camille met his gaze. Agent Miller, unless you're detaining me or arresting me, I'm going to leave now. Miller's hand landed on her shoulder. Actually, ma'am, you're not going anywhere. You fit the description of a suspect we're looking for, Miller said, tightening his grip. Female, African American, mid-30s, driving a dark sedan. We have reason to believe you're involved in interstate drug trafficking. Camille felt the eyes of the parking lot on her. 3 more shoppers had stopped, phones raised. Kennedy's muffled crying came through the car window. I'm an attorney with the Georgia State Bar. I've never been involved in any criminal activity. You have no probable cause. Anyone can print a fake ID. Miller cut her off. Camille reached into her tote again, moving deliberately. She pulled out her State Bar card, the one with the holographic seal, and her photograph. This isn't fake. My name is Camille James. I'm a civil rights attorney with an office on Peachtree Street. You can verify this in 30 seconds. Miller took the card, studied it for exactly 3 seconds, and handed it back. A lot of people impersonate lawyers. We'll sort it out at the office. Sort what out? I haven't committed a crime. I'm not suspected of a crime. You have no warrant, no probable cause. Ma'am, you need to calm down. I am calm. What I'm not is compliant with an illegal detention. Torres moved closer to the car. Kennedy was screaming now, palms pressed against the glass. A Publix manager had emerged from the store, squinting against the sun. More phones, more witnesses. Camille locked eyes with a young woman in scrubs who had her camera raised. Get it all, Camille said to her. Every word, every second. Miller's face hardened. Ma'am, you're being detained for investigation of drug trafficking. If you continue to resist, I'm not resisting, I'm asserting my Fourth Amendment rights. And unless you're prepared to articulate specific, articulable facts that give you reasonable suspicion that I've committed a crime, you're violating federal law. Step away from the vehicle. I'm asking for your supervisor. Step away from the vehicle now. I'm not resisting. I'm asking for... Miller grabbed her wrist. Turn around. Hands behind your back. The handcuffs clicked shut with the kind of finality Camille had only heard in courtrooms when the bailiff led defendants away. Cold metal bit into her wrists. Kennedy's screams turned into a high, keening wail that cut through the parking lot noise like a siren. This is an illegal arrest, Camille said, forcing her voice to stay steady even as her heart hammered against her ribs. I'm invoking my right to remain silent. I want to speak to a supervisor immediately. Miller guided her toward the SUV. You'll speak to whoever we tell you to speak to. The Publix manager jogged over, a middle-aged white man with a name tag that read Derek. Is everything okay here? There's a child in that car. Torres turned. Sir, this is federal business. Step back. But the kid, we'll handle it. Camille twisted to look at Derek. My niece is 8 years old. Her name is Kennedy. Please don't leave her alone. Call my sister. The number's in my phone. Jasmine James, please. Derek nodded, already moving toward the sedan. Kennedy was pressed against the window, unicorn abandoned on the seat, her face wet and red. Camille watched as Derek opened the door, crouched down, spoke softly. Kennedy shook her head violently, reaching for Camille. I need to stay with her, Camille said. She's 8. She's terrified. Should have thought about that before getting involved in drug trafficking, Miller said. I'm not involved in anything. You have no evidence? We'll see what we find when we search your vehicle. Camille's blood went cold. You don't have a warrant. Don't need one. Probable cause. Drug trafficking investigation. Miller opened the SUV's back door. Hey, get in. A woman in the crowd shouted, "This is wrong. She didn't do anything." Others murmured agreement. Phones tracked every movement. Camille saw her reflection in a car window. Professional blazer, hands cuffed behind her back, face a mask of controlled fury. She climbed into the SUV. Through the window, she watched Derek lift Kennedy out of the sedan, the little girl still reaching back toward Camille, still crying. The manager carried her toward the store. The SUV door slammed shut. The sound echoed in Camille's chest like a judge's gavel. Miller climbed into the driver's seat. Torres took shotgun. Kemp stayed behind to secure the vehicle, which Camille knew meant tear through her groceries and glove box, looking for anything they could twist into justification. The engine rumbled to life. Through the tinted windows, she watched the Publix shrink behind them. Her Apple Watch pressed against her wrist beneath the handcuffs. She'd worn it for the heart rate tracking during morning runs, never imagining she'd need it for this. She twisted her hand, felt for the digital crown, and pressed. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession, the emergency sequence she'd programmed years ago and never used. Voice memo activated. Miller merged onto Piedmont. "Command's going to love this one." Torres laughed. "Think she's actually a lawyer?" "Who cares? She's a caller." That's 3 this month. "We still need 2 more Class A stops to hit quota. Captain's going to be up our asses if we don't close the gap." Camille held her breath. Her watch was recording. Every word, every admission. Miller glanced in the rear-view mirror at her. "You comfortable back there, counselor?" She said nothing. "That's what I thought." He returned his attention to Torres. "Command wants numbers out of Midtown and Buckhead. Black professionals driving nice cars. Easiest probable cause we'll ever manufacture. Even if it doesn't stick, it pads the quarterly." "What about Virginia Highland?" "Same deal. Plenty of targets. They put up a fight, makes it even better. Resisting federal agents looks great in the report." Torres nodded. "Atlanta office loses discretionary funding if we don't hit metrics. When Captain made that crystal clear last week. Then we'd better deliver." Miller took the Spring Street exit. "Besides, most of these people settle before trial to pay to make it go away. Department gets the numbers, we get the credit, everybody wins. Except her. She'll be fine. Couple hours in holding, realize she's out of her depth, call a lawyer. Oh wait, she claims she is a lawyer." Miller chuckled. "Either way, she'll walk. They always do." Camille's watch was still recording. Her wrists ached. Her throat was tight with rage. But she stayed silent, cataloging every word, every admission, every piece of evidence that would dismantle their defense when this ended up in federal court. Because it would end up in federal court, she'd make sure of that. The DEA field office on Spring Street looked like every other federal building Camille had entered. Gray concrete, American flags, the seal of authority stamped on everything. They brought her through a side entrance, past cubicles where agents barely glanced up from their computers. No one asked why she was in handcuffs. No one questioned the arrest. The holding cell was 8 feet by 6 feet. Concrete walls, a metal bench, a toilet without a seat, a camera in the corner with a blinking red light. Miller removed the handcuffs, stepped back, and locked the door without a word. The clock on the wall read 11:02 a.m. Camille sat on the bench and started counting. She invoked her right to remain silent when they came the first time. 47 minutes after she arrived. 2 agents she'd never seen before asking about drug connections, trafficking routes, dealers in Atlanta and Savannah. She said nothing except, "I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, and I want to speak with the special agent in charge." They left. The clock ticked forward. She invoked her rights again when they came the second time, 93 minutes later. Different agents, same questions. Where did she get the car? Who were her associates? Why was she nervous? She wasn't nervous, she was furious. But she said nothing except her repeated request for the SAC. They left. The clock kept ticking. No water, no phone call, no explanation. The cell smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Camille studied every inch of it, memorizing details. The crack in the corner where the wall met the ceiling, the rust stain on the toilet. Either the way the fluorescent light flickered every 37 seconds. She thought about Kennedy. Wondered if Jasmine had picked her up yet. Wondered if her niece would ever trust her again. If an 8-year-old brain could separate Aunt Camille got arrested from Aunt Camille did something wrong. She thought about her practice. The clients who trusted her to defend them against exactly this kind of abuse. The irony of becoming a victim herself wasn't lost on her. And she thought about Miller and Torres, their casual admission in the SUV, the quota system, the manufactured probable cause, the targeting of black professionals in affluent neighborhoods, the institutionalized racism wrapped in federal authority. She checked her watch. 2:17 p.m. 3 hours and 15 minutes. No charges filed. No evidence presented. No explanation given. Yeah, it's just a civil rights attorney sitting in a federal holding cell because a DEA agent needed to hit his numbers. The clock ticked forward. They released her at 4:02 p.m. without explanation, apology, or paperwork. Beyond a single sheet, Agent Miller thrust at her through the open cell door. "You're free to go. Sign here." Camille read the form. Detainee release. Subject questioned and cleared of suspicion. No arrest record. No charges. As if the last 5 hours and 17 minutes had been erased by bureaucratic language. "I want a copy of every document related to my detention. Body camera footage, interrogation recordings, everything." Miller's expression was flat. "You can file a FOIA request like everyone else." "Where's my vehicle?" "Impounded. Here's the address." He handed her another slip of paper. "You could pick it up Monday. Bring the registration." "My niece was picked up by a family member 2 hours ago. You're done here. Sign the form or don't. Either way, you're leaving." Camille signed. She wanted the paper trail, wanted the timestamp, wanted every shred of documentation she could use later when this case went to trial. Miller escorted her through the building and out the front entrance. No ride offered, no assistance. Just the federal building steps and downtown Atlanta traffic roaring past. She had no phone, still in her impounded car, no wallet, no keys, just her watch and the clothes on her back. She walked 3 blocks to a MARTA station, borrowed a phone from a college student who recognized her from an ACLU panel last year, and called Jasmine. Her sister answered on the first ring. "Oh my God, Camille, are you... I'm fine. Is Kennedy okay?" Silence. Then, quietly, "She won't talk. She won't eat. She keeps asking if you're in jail." I didn't know what to tell her. Camille closed her eyes. The afternoon sun beat down on her shoulders. Federal building behind her, her career, her reputation, her life. All of it upended because she'd stopped for groceries in the wrong neighborhood. "Tell her I'm coming home," Camille said. "Tell her I'm fine, and tell her Aunt Camille is going to make sure this never happens to anyone else." She hung up, returned the phone, caught the train north toward Jasmine's house in Buckhead, and began planning her case. Marcus Reed's office overlooked Peachtree Street from the 14th floor of a glass tower downtown. Camille had argued opposite him twice in federal court, once on a police brutality case, once on a wrongful termination suit. He'd won both times, which was exactly why she'd called him 3 days after her release. Reed was 71, silver-haired, and had been suing government agencies since before Camille was born. He listened to her story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad in the same meticulous handwriting that had dismantled qualified immunity defenses in 3 landmark civil rights cases. When she finished, he set down his pen. They recorded themselves admitting to a quota system. "On my Apple Watch, I have the audio file." "And you're certain they don't know about the recording?" "Positive. It's they never searched me properly. Just threw me in the vehicle." Reed leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Camille, you understand what you're proposing. Suing the DEA isn't like suing a police department. Federal defendants have resources. They'll bury us in motions. They'll claim qualified immunity. They'll fight every inch." "I know. They'll offer to settle, probably for a lot of money, with an NDA attached. I'm not interested in their money. I'm interested in exposure, accountability, making sure this doesn't happen to someone else who doesn't have a law degree and a recording device." Reed smiled. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." He reached for his phone. "I'm calling Janine Watts. She's my associate. Specializes in federal civil rights litigation. We're going to need discovery, lots of it." Over the next 4 months, they built the case. Discovery revealed the pattern Camille had suspected. 73 investigatory stops in Midtown Atlanta between January and June. 68 involved black drivers. Not one resulted in drug-related charges. Internal DEA memos used phrases like high-yield demographic targeting and performance-based enforcement metrics. Email chains between Miller's supervisor and regional command discussed optimizing arrest ratios in affluent minority corridors. They found 16 other plaintiffs, professional black men and women, doctors, lawyers, business owners, all detained without cause in Publix parking lots, Whole Foods, Target. All released without charges, all offered small settlements to sign NDAs. None had settled. They'd been waiting for someone to lead the fight. Camille became that someone. The DEA's settlement offer arrived 4 weeks before trial. $2.3 million. A standard non-disclosure agreement. A demand that Camille dismiss all claims with prejudice and never speak publicly about the incident. She read it twice, then set it on Reed's desk. "No. Camille?" Reed's voice was careful. "That's a substantial offer. Life-changing money. You could... No. Let me finish. You could expand your practice, set up a fund for victims like yourself. Do a lot of good with that money. I can do more good by exposing what happened in open court." Reed nodded slowly. "I thought you'd say that. So did they, actually. There's a second offer." He slid another document across the desk. $4.5 million. Same NDA. They're doubling down. Camille didn't even look at it. Marcus, I don't care if they offer me $10 million. This isn't about money. It's about making sure no other black attorney gets handcuffed in front of a Publix because some agent needs to hit his numbers. The jury might not side with us. Federal agents get a lot of deference. If we lose, then we lose. But at least the truth will be public. At least there will be a record. At least Kennedy will know I fought back. She met his eyes. I'm not taking their money. I'm taking them to trial. Reed smiled again, the way he had the first day she'd walked into his office. Good. Because I've already told them we're rejecting both offers. Just wanted to make sure you were certain. I'm certain. Then let's get ready. Trial starts in 4 weeks. We're going to need you on that stand, calm and composed, telling your story exactly the way it happened. I've been practicing civil rights law for 12 years. I think I can handle a witness stand. This is different. You're not the lawyer this time. You're the victim. And that federal jury needs to see you as human, not as opposing counsel. Reed leaned forward. Can you do that? Camille thought about Kennedy's face pressed against the car window, the cold metal handcuffs. Miller's voice discussing quotas like she wasn't even human. 5 hours in a cell for the crime of buying groceries. Yes, she said, I can do that. The federal courthouse in downtown Atlanta was packed on the first day of trial. Media crews lined the steps. Civil rights groups had organized a rally outside. Kennedy was there, holding Jasmine's hand, wearing the same unicorn shirt she'd worn that Saturday morning 6 months ago. Inside the jury box filled with 12 faces Camille would come to know intimately over the next 3 weeks. 7 women, 5 men, mix of races and ages, a school teacher, a retired engineer, a young marketing analyst, people who would decide whether the federal government owed her $18.6 million for 5 hours of her life. Reed's opening statement was surgical. He walked the jury through every detail: the grocery store, the tactical approach, the lack of probable cause, the handcuffs, Kennedy's screams, the quota system. And then he played the Apple Watch recording. Miller's voice filled the courtroom. Black professionals drive in nice cars. Easiest probable cause we'll ever manufacture. Torres responding. Atlanta office loses discretionary funding if we don't hit metrics. The jury shifted in their seats. One woman's mouth fell open. The retired engineer shook his head. The DEA's attorney objected, moved to exclude the recording as illegally obtained. The judge denied the motion. Georgia was a one-party consent state. Camille had every right to record a conversation she was part of. Over the next 2 weeks, the jury watched body camera footage, heard from witnesses who'd recorded the arrest on their phones, listened to Derek, the Publix manager, describe Kennedy's hysteria and how long it took to calm her down. Yika watched Camille's own testimony as she walked through every moment of that Saturday morning with the kind of precision that comes from reliving trauma nightly for months. The DEA's defense was simple. Agent Miller had reasonable suspicion based on an anonymous tip about drug trafficking in the area. He'd acted in good faith. Qualified immunity protected him. Reed destroyed it during cross-examination. Agent Miller, could you describe this anonymous tip? Miller shifted. It came through our tip line. When? That morning. What time? I'd have to check the records. Let me help you. We subpoenaed your tip line records. There was no call that morning. In fact, there were no tips about drug activity in Midtown Atlanta for the entire week prior to Ms. James's arrest. Reed held up a document. Warren, would you like to revise your testimony? Miller's attorney objected. The judge overruled. The jury leaned forward. Reed pressed. The truth is, Agent Miller, you had no tip. No probable cause, no reasonable suspicion. You saw a black woman in a nice car and decided she'd make a good quota filler. Isn't that correct? No, I was doing my job. Your job is to manufacture arrests to justify federal funding? Objection. Sustained. Rephrase, counselor. Reed smiled. No further questions. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. The verdict came back on a Thursday afternoon. The courtroom was silent as the jury foreman stood. A black woman in her 50s, a nurse from Stone Mountain, and read from the paper in her hands, "We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Camille James, and against the defendants, DEA agents, Seth Miller, Carlos Torres, and the United States Drug Enforcement Administration." Camille felt Jasmine squeeze her hand. Reed remained perfectly still beside her, a statue in a 3-piece suit. "We award compensatory damages in the amount of $3.6 million. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Kennedy was in the front row, watching with wide eyes. "And we award punitive damages in the amount of $15 million. The courtroom erupted. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder, calling for order. Camille sat frozen, unable to process the number. The $18.6 million. For 5 hours of her life. For Kennedy's trauma. For every black professional who'd been targeted by Miller's quota system and was too afraid or too exhausted to fight back. The DEA's attorney requested a stay pending appeal. The judge denied it. The evidence of deliberate constitutional violations was overwhelming. The jury has spoken. Outside the courthouse steps were chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Civil rights activists cheered. Camille stood at the microphone with Reed beside her, Kennedy in front of her, Jasmine's arm around her shoulders. "This verdict isn't just about me," Camille said, her voice steady despite the cameras and the crowd and the weight of everything that had happened. "It's about every person of color who's been profiled, detained, or arrested because a federal agent needed to hit a quota. It's about Kennedy and every child who's watched their parent or aunt or uncle get handcuffed for the crime of existing while black." She paused, looked down at her niece. Kennedy was smiling now, unicorn clutched tight, no longer afraid. "Today I'm announcing the James Civil Liberties Institute. It will be funded by this settlement and dedicated to defending victims of federal overreach. We will take cases other firms won't touch. We will reject settlement offers designed to silence the truth. And we will hold federal agents accountable when they violate the Constitution they swore to uphold." The crowd roared. Kennedy hugged her leg. And somewhere in that chaos, Camille felt something shift. The trauma beginning to transform into purpose, the violation into vindication. 3 days later, the Department of Justice announced a pattern and practice investigation into the DEA's Atlanta field office. Agent Seth Miller, Carlos Torres, and their supervisor were terminated. 68 cases were reviewed for civil rights violations, and Camille James opened the doors of her institute, ready for the next fight.